You're listening to SaskScapes, a podcast featuring the stories of arts, culture, and heritage in Saskatchewan. How sweet it is! No more fitting a title could there be for this episode. I'm Kevin Power, and words can't convey how excited I was when I first made contact with my guest, Gladys McCarthy. I was fascinated by her story and her entrepreneurial savvy. Gladys is a chocolatier, and for the past 30 years she has been perfecting the art of handmade chocolates. Her company, Glad's Chocolates, has earned a reputation throughout Saskatchewan, and the word-of-mouth advertising alone is a testament to the quality of her work. And there is so much more to Gladys, as you'll see. I joined her on her farm, which has a wonderful history of its own. You'll hear the sounds of birds chirping and the sounds of my taste buds dancing as I get a tour of the studio where Glad's Chocolates are created. And speaking of dancing, wait till you hear what happens in the Red Barn. And before I said goodbye, Gladys had one more surprise to show me. In another barn, Gladys had her father's original snowplane. I'd never seen anything like it, with a giant propeller at one end and a small enclosed seating area and two very large skis. It looked like a sort of time machine. And when she was little, Glad's dad would often drive, or should I say fly, her to school on snow days. I feel so lucky to have met Gladys McCarthy, and I'm very happy to bring you a podcast of our time together. So I'm here with Gladys McCarthy, and I'm sitting on a lovely farm. How many acres is this?
There's a section here.
This is a section?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the RM of...
Oakdale.
Of Oakdale.
Mm-hmm.
Right, okay. And it's a beautiful day. We're sitting outside. I've met the dog, Max. And how long have you been out here? You mentioned that you were in Saskatoon before, but how long are you here?
I moved back here in 97. 1997, yeah. So I actually grew up on this farm.
Oh.
And then I was many different places in my life. And my last chocolate business was in Saskatoon.
So you grew up on this very farm?
And
this is a family farm?
Yeah. There's nobody living on it since my mom moved to Kindersley, which was in 88. And that's, that's when I opened a shop in Saskatoon. Before that, I had a shop in Salt Spring Island. So
did you?
Yeah.
Well, all right. Since let's keep it on the farm here for a second. So, where would your house have been when you grew up here?
Beside this one.
Oh, beside it.
Yeah. So in the lawn there's a little dip, and that's where the older house was. This one was built in about 63 in there, 63, 64. So the older farmhouse is actually moved to Smiley, and it's still there, and somebody's living in it.
They moved the whole house.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that happens often.
It does.
Wow.
Houses moving down the road.
It amazes me how houses are able to move themselves.
I know, especially an older one,
Right.
But yeah, it worked. A German family in Smiley bought it. She just loved it. I remember that, yeah.
Wow. So where'd you play when you grew up here? Everywhere.
Everywhere. We had wonderful poplars along the laneway. They were good climbing. And
right.
There was a swing and playhouse and bicycles.
And all these trees are planted, or are they
all planted?
Yeah, I've been tipped off to the fact that you can usually tell, even if it's been abandoned, if you look at a field and there's usually a clump of trees, even if there's nothing there, it marks where somebody once lived. Right, which is interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. It wasn't a fact of all the trees being wiped out. It was a fact of them not being here.
Right, and they act as a natural windbreaker as well. Right, and did this
function as a farm? You were a working farm when you grew up here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had cattle
Right.
and some horses and chickens and, the whole bit. And in those days, farmers could make a living off of that much land. Dad actually had a section and a half, and then in the last couple of years, we sold a half section. But, yeah, it was definitely enough land. And
when you say farmers could make a living because it's harder now, with that?
Yeah.
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 You pretty much have to have a huge piece of land.
Yeah, just the way it's sort of pushed towards huge. Smaller farmers need a certain amount in order to keep surviving. I don't know, there's all sorts of ins and outs with that.
It's a tough life.
But it is a lot harder for a small farmer.
Right.
So I just hope small farmers go to organic, but some of them are doing that. Yeah.
Right. So of course, when you were growing up here on the farm, people didn't talk about organic.
No, it was organic.
It was organic.
Well, I know my dad started spraying the crops, but our gardens, like we have a big garden there and several gardens in the lower garden. So, it was, pretty self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when did you leave here originally, and where did you go first?
When I graduated from grade 12, I went to university in Saskatchewan.
Right. What did you study there?
It was the sciences that I went into. During the summer, I was able to get a job in cancer and medical research. So I learned some tissue culture and stuff like that. And then after I graduated, a lady that worked in Saskatchewan was working in the lab there. I contacted her in Edmonton, and then I got a job in cytogenetics there for about a year.
Wow. And tell me about that field.
What I did is very, very antiquated now, but what I was doing basically mostly children that would have a suspected chromosome abnormality.
Wow.
And so then that's where the tissue culture came in, growing the white blood cells until they were dividing, using photomicrography to photograph them, and then manually cutting out karyotype and all the chromosomes, laying them out. And so now it's so fine-tuned compared to that, but that was
cutting edge then.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
So you're a scientist.
Well, you'll see with the chocolate making too that there's a lot of science involved in that.
In my mind, I'm already going there.
Yeah.
I'm already making that parallel. Right.
Yeah. So that was just, I didn't stay in that for that long, but I did that, some bacteriology, some lab work, some cytogenetics for a year in Australia.
So I don't want to rush things along. Eventually we'll get there. What happened after you finished that field of work?
Traveling set me on a different path. And I kind of realized that being a lab was pretty isolating.
Right.
So I didn't and I would have had to probably do more schooling to really do more than just the routine lab work that I was doing. Then I decided I needed to do some other things, so just waitressing, stuff like that, so I could ski and whatever.
Where was all this happening?
That was in Jasper when I came back.
Right.
Then I met the fellow that I ended up marrying, and he was an entrepreneur. So if you don't want to have 2 hours of stories, I won't tell you about all the many, many businesses we had.
Oh, so you ventured into many things.
Yeah.
Any of them successful before the one where you're at now? Tell me some of the more amusing things that you really thought, oh, this is going to take off.
It was...
And you being the stoic partner said, all right, dear.
Something like that. Yeah, dragging, we ended up having two kids, which they learned very early how to run businesses. So,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they worked hard too. So
Now, were these inventions sort of?
not so much. Like, I'll run through it quickly. You could stop me.
That's okay.
Our first one probably was at Alberta Beach outside of Edmonton. And we bought a miniature golf course that it had been closed for a while. So we fixed it up and had trampolines and stuff. And so then after that one, we had a business in Edmonton delivering fast food products to hotels, popcorn and snack foods and stuff like that. Then there was a 3-year contract with Elk Island National Parks that we had the concessions there. We did some fairs with our popcorn and candy floss and stuff, selling garbage to unsuspecting kids.
Killing kids kindly with cotton candy.
I know. I believe I did that.
Right. All right.
The kind of a funny one was sort of in between there, and there was my husband and his friend had been to Las Vegas and seen these shoe shine stands that were, popular in hotels, and so
you started a shoe shine business.
He built this beautiful shoe shine stand. His partner, or his buddy, was a carpenter in one of the hotels in Edmonton. When I had to shine shoes.
You were not only making these things happen, you were having to do it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And you're thinking, a lab doesn't sound too bad right about now.
That's right. So, anyway, did
when
that for a while.
did this glorious chocolate business come? When was the light shone on that idea?
Okay, that was on Salt Spring Island.
Okay.
So we had rented a place out there. That was during Elk Island days, and so we had the winters off. And we had rented a place on Salt Spring Island. Neither of us had lived on the coast before and kind of wanted to. So there was an ad in the Edmonton paper that a couple wanted to go south and somebody to look after their house. So that was our first bit on Salt Spring Island, and then when we finished our contract at Elk Island, we decided we'd go out and see if we could make a living there. So it started as just a ice cream candy shop. We had lots of imported British sweets, and we had chocolates in from Vancouver. And at that time, it was sort of the blossoming of the more refined chocolates, more of a European chocolate. And so luckily we had some expertise there was an old gentleman, Mr. Baines, that had been in the chocolate business for a very long time, and he was very helpful. And we got in some equipment for tempering the chocolate and sort of lots of trial and error, and with some help started making chocolate and gradually having them look well enough that we could put them in the cabinet and not buy quite as many from Vancouver. So that was kind of the start of it.
Plus, you had a fairly isolated market there on Salt Spring.
Lots of people in the summer, fairly quiet in the winter. Because at that time, there was like 6,000, I think, residents on the island, which I don't know what it is now, at least tripled probably. Yeah. But, it was fairly quiet. Also a stopping place for the yachts that came up from the States through the channel, and they would stop in Salt Spring Island and stock up on liquor and chocolates and whatever else they needed.
Right.
And then we did some selling, at Christmas and occasions, busy chocolate occasions in Victoria too. We did a bit of that. So
that one felt right out of all of the business ventures?
That was probably and we sold it an expo year, so that was a more long-lasting and good adventure.
But you were self-taught as a chocolatier?
Pretty much, yeah.
What was Can you remember the first big, tempering chocolate, even I know, is a fine science. Did you have many disasters in that trial and error period?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are probably so many that I don't remember
Right.
all of them.
And of course, you had to do dreaded taste tests.
That was the worst.
Oh,
for
the
sure.
worst it must have been. Just dreadful. Your kids must have... Were your kids still living with you at the time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were young at that time.
They must have been thrilled at that business venture.
Um,
Well, it had to generate more excitement than the shoe shine.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Right.
And selling hamburgers at
Right.
Elk Island. So,
Right.
yeah, and they enjoyed the school on Salt Spring Island. So, yeah, but they had to work as well. So, if you would ask them if they enjoyed that time, they would probably think about the time they had to work, maybe.
Oh, right, right.
But, maybe as they get older, they'll think of more of the good things. And, life is not a plan you make, usually.
not.
Nope. So we're going to come back here for a visit after we had sold the farm, or sold our chocolate business. And my dad suddenly died. That was sort of the changing factor there. So, we spent a year here, opened the business in Saskatoon. So the business in Saskatoon was mine, and I had it for 9 years. During the last couple of years that I had the shop, I'm thinking, how can I make an income? What can I do? My mom in Kindersley, I'd come and visit her. We were still, growing a garden here. My cousin and her husband were trying to keep up the yard when nobody was here. And it's such a beautiful farm. Somebody should live here, but I need an income. So sort of during those 2 years, I thought, maybe I can make chocolate there and be a wholesaler. So I had the health inspector come out and told him what I had in mind. And he said, yeah, these are a few changes you have to make, and call me when you're ready. I'll give you your inspection. So I came back here. Then eventually I had more outlets for my chocolate once I was doing wholesales.
Now, it's interesting because in many ways you did go back to a lab environment,
Yes.
a solitary lab environment.
I know.
Right.
The big thing was that I could regulate my own time a lot better.
Right.
Busy seasons for sure, pretty committed to doing stuff every day. But, if I knew my kids were coming home, then I could make ahead and have a week with them or whatever. So, yeah, that certainly was liberated of a lot of my time. So, yeah, that's right. It's kind of a lab, but
Yeah. But it probably is a testament to the fact that you enjoy sort of a solitary work environment versus, a big office kind of.
yeah. And in Saskatoon, I had wonderful employees. So that was easier too than.
Are you on your own here, or do you have employees?
I do all the making and everything.
Yeah.
But when in a busy season like before Christmas, it gets very busy. Then I have friends in Kindersley that will come and help me, unload the trays and package and stuff like that. So, so basically on my own, but call in help when I need it.
Can we visit the lab?
We can do that.
Great. So now we've moved inside to where the magic happens. So I'm in the lower part of Gladys's house, and this is ground zero for Glad's chocolates. So in a season, how many chocolates would you estimate that you sell?
Hey, it's Kevin. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just a quick reminder that the SaskScapes podcast is available for free on your favorite podcast app, or you can stream it from your browser. Check out the show notes for the link. On the SaskScapes homepage, you'll notice something new under the logo called SaskScapes Plus. You can't miss it. There's a big button saying support with a heart icon next to it. I'd love it if you could click on that button and help keep this podcast series going. When SaskScapes launched in May 2014, it was the first podcast in the province celebrating arts, culture, and heritage. In fact, you'd have been pretty hard-pressed to find any Saskatchewan podcasts. So I'd like to think that we paved the way. It's been because of your support that this podcast is now in its 9th year. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
My estimation comes from this little box here. So all the little cups that the chocolates go in, and I usually use 1 case of that in a year, which has 25,000 little cups.
Wow.
So,
and how many of those boxes are going out, say, in a month?
Some accounts just get the chocolate in bulk.
Right.
And then other ones I package up in gift boxes. So again, monthly it's hard to say because the fall season is the busiest when people get back to their regular jobs in September, and then it sort of builds up momentum until Christmas. So that's the busiest season. And, all the Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, all those. Right. And then I get orders for weddings and conferences. And
right. And this is just not local. How far are your chocolates being shipped?
Well, right now, it's just Kindersley and Saskatchewan.
Mm-hmm.
I have outlets. For quite a while, I was supplying a place in Regina. And actually, everybody that I supply to have contacted me and asked for my chocolate. So I really have not done any marketing since
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth and eating of mouth.
Right. Well, that brings to mind this question. When you're working around chocolate, do you eventually just get sick of the smell, just everything about chocolate, or have you seen the movie Chocolat?
Oh yes,
yes.
That's a good one.
So you know how you feel at the end of that movie, or how I felt. I mean, you see chocolate in a very sensual, very, very meaningful way. Do you have a separation from chocolate after a while?
Oh yeah, but while I'm making it, definitely I'm tasting and eating, and it's because it's not like you're baking and you've got that sweet sugar smell.
Yeah.
Like I don't smell chocolate anymore.
Right.
It's not. I don't use extra sugar in my chocolates. Mm-hmm. So, there is sugar in the chocolates that I buy from like the bulk chocolate, but I'm not adding any extra except for the caramels. I cook those. So it's not overwhelming as far as feeling sick of it, but when I'm finished with it, I'm not interested in eating chocolate, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So it comes first as bulk chocolate, and then when does the tempering process happen? All right, so
I'm going to show you. That's how I get the chocolate in 50-pound cases.
All right.
So there's 5 10-pound blocks of chocolate that are ready to eat.
Okay. So that's a semi-sweet chocolate?
I use 70%, a 52%. Mm-hmm. Those are the dark ones. I do a milk chocolate and a white chocolate.
So 70% is the darkest you go?
Yeah. That's, it's sort of middle of the road when you're supplying outlets, what people's taste is.
Is white chocolate really chocolate?
There we go. I'll tell you.
It's cocoa. There is a cocoa butter.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah. So as long as there's cocoa butter, and I think, the terminology is sort of dictated by food regulations and stuff, and can we call it chocolate or not? But definitely the white chocolate I use is cocoa butter. Mm-hmm. A lot of the wafers that people use for home chocolate making, they have vegetable oil instead of the cocoa butter.
Right.
And if you look at them, they're a lot whiter. Yeah. So my chocolate would be, and so the white chocolate also has to be tempered.
I was going to say, it has to be tempered as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but it's minus the cocoa. So if people get headaches from the cocoa, they can
Right.
eat white chocolate.
So no caffeine in white chocolate.
No caffeine.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the chocolate gets tempered on this stone slab here.
I actually temper it in here.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So some people would put it out on the stone slab.
Mm-hmm.
But I have this is on and off here. So these are just food warmers, actually. And
Right, they look like the thing you see in a buffet.
Yeah.
And you lift it up and there'd be bacon and pancakes inside.
But voila,
Voila!
chocolat.
Instead we have chocolat, which is just now in liquid form.
Yeah. So the chocolate I showed you from the cases, then I melt it in here.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a thermometer here. And
that keeps it at a steady temperature?
Well, for tempering it, like if I was going to use this tomorrow, I would have more chocolate in here because that's getting very low. Basically, I left it on so you could see it.
All right. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So if I was making some milk chocolate tomorrow, I would have more chocolate in here. I would have it'd be melted. I have the temperature turned up so it's about 120 on here, and I'd be stirring it every so often. All the cocoa butter crystals are going to melt out. So there's alpha, beta, gamma, whole series of cocoa butter crystals. There's only one that's stable.
Here comes the scientist again.
Here's the scientist. So then at nighttime, I will turn it off. Also the day before, I'm making the centers that I want to dip in the milk chocolate. So it drops down to, about 80. Well, I keep switching back and forth here because I had to change my thermometer from centigrade.
Oh, right.
About 85. So we're on Fahrenheit right now with this thermometer. And then for milk chocolate, I would bring it up to a certain temperature. For the dark chocolate, and not quite the same temperature, a little bit warmer for the dark chocolate.
Right. And there's a danger point in both temperatures where the chocolate can separate. Is that what it's called?
Okay, you gotta wait.
Okay. All right, I'm jumping the gun. I'm jumping the gun only because as I'm looking at it, I think, oh, that's what mine didn't look like.
Okay, for sure you don't want any water in chocolate.
Right.
Chocolate doesn't like
right,
water.
Which is why when you put it on a double boiler, you got to make sure water doesn't splash in the chocolate.
Yeah, and you don't want to get it too hot.
Right.
Because it'll be a lost cause if you get it too hot.
I've experienced that.
Okay. So then, when you get it at the right temperature, that the stable cocoa butter crystal will form and the unstable ones melt out.
Okay.
And then I take a piece from here, so off there's the dark block. So this is already tempered. So again, we're going to the genetic thing.
Okay.
I'll throw a block of this in the vat, and it speeds up the formation of the stable cocoa butter crystal.
Gotcha.
And, I probably would eventually get there, but this speeds up the process. And then you keep sort of testing a little blob, put it in the fridge, dip a center or two, let it sit on the tray.
And what are you testing for?
You want the chocolate to be shiny.
Right.
And no streaks.
Right.
So if you've got streaks, you've still got unstable cocoa butter crystals in there. And, if you just do a little blob of chocolate when it sets up, and then you also break it. If it has a nice snap, it's ready. So the texture is not going to be the same if you don't have all stable cocoa butter crystals.
Right.
And then if you do dip a bunch of centers, the oxygen, the air will get in, and the centers will dry out a lot quicker.
Right.
So you have to do this process properly here in order for the chocolates to last. And then the centers are totally sealed and they have a nice shiny look to them.
Right.
But if your outlet doesn't regulate the temperature of their shop, then...
Oh, because it will start to break down?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why old chocolate, you can tell because it's
gray.
completely dusty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dusty.
Dusty, yeah.
Or moisture does that too.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had a lot of moisture in my fridge on these rainy days,
right,
and if I took some chocolate out of the fridge, a box or something, and took the lid off right away, it would sweat. And then
Right.
the moisture again would give it that ugly look. So it might not even be old. It might just have, too moist a room, too warm a room.
Right.
Too.
It's very sensitive.
It is.
So, needless to say, Max doesn't get to ever come near any of this.
I would have a dead dog if
Exactly.
he eats everything
Exactly.
he sees. That
Right.
I have a bunch of molds here, but
Right.
a lot of the molds I used were when I had the shop in Saskatchewan, so they're more impulse items, and but I still use these, as you
They're
can see.
well-loved molds.
Yeah, these ones I use all the time. So this is the mice and hedgehogs here.
Oh, right. So you turn your molds out on the slab? Is that when the slab comes into it after the chocolate is set?
Yeah, when I'm doing the molded things like for this, so it's I pour the chocolate for a mouse. I would, when the chocolate is ready, and then I use the hair dryer here just to go over the mold, and if there's any bits of chocolate or anything in there. So then when I do the layer of chocolate, and I'll empty it out in there, and then but also use this to shake it down and to scrape off edges and stuff. So mostly it's used for that when I am doing molding, not when I'm dipping individual chocolates. And at Christmas, Valentine's Day, I'll do some other molds too, the chocolate boxes. So then this is good for scraping the mold and scraping it off the marble slab as well.
Oh, here are some that are set in molds here.
Yeah, and these are just the solid chocolate here, but you need
and then out they come, the little elephants and ducks and cats and monkeys. So this is the wildlife edition, the National Geographic edition.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so when chocolate sets up, it pulls away. It shrinks a little bit, pulls away from the mold, and
then that looks, that's the shine that you want?
Yes.
Right.
So these are...
All right, then here we have the trays. And these are all standard chocolates that you would make in the boxes. These aren't custom orders. These are...
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so I was really low on chocolate. I sort of abandoned it for getting ready for barn dance, and then I was just getting my variety up again, so I'll have chocolates when people order. So there's a couple of places in Kindersley that carry them. So I've got, these are Saskatoon berry, and these I haven't got their decoration on. Some of them I sprinkle at the same time, and others I decorate afterwards. So these are it's actually a lingonberry. They usually call them the wild cranberry from the north. And then the maraschino cherries, a cappuccino. And this is the wild blueberry from the north. And the raspberry I have to decorate. That one's amaretto. Oh, a little bit of pecan bark there. And that's the end of it there, more amaretto.
It's been how many years really doing this?
I think it's about 30.
Yeah, well, that's a long time.
Yeah.
One can't say you just didn't try.
You're right.
You definitely did it. And the creative element must just be very gratifying.
Yeah, that's kind of a fun part too, that just creating different centers, getting the right... So they're creamy, but you can still roll them and dip them without them falling apart.
Right.
Yeah, so... Yeah, there's
great sense of satisfaction, I would imagine, as you see these boxes go out the door.
Yeah, there's certainly lots of good things about it, and it's a very compact business, as you see.
Yeah.
You can do it at a small space and produce a lot of, when I'm busy, I can fill these trays up in a couple of days, and that's when I call in my helpers.
How many hours on a day when you're busy? How many hours are you putting in down here?
It's probably not a hugely long day, maybe 8 or 9 hours a day. So, I'd be dipping them during the day, getting everything ready in the morning, rolling the centers, dipping them, maybe finished by 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
And you've always got music playing?
Yeah.
I can see that. I saw that.
That helps a lot.
I bet. Wow, what a very gratifying ambition. It's it's unique. It's
Yeah, I think gratifying is a good word because, I mean, you get tired making them sometimes, but then when somebody gives them a gift or then people have enjoyed them or all that, it's the enjoyment that people get
you can
out
sit
of
back
it.
at night going, somebody's biting into one of my chocolates and feeling pretty euphoric.
Hey,
Right,
I'll have
there.
to think about that when I'm getting fed up. I'll just
there's
carry that thought.
all the research on especially dark chocolate and all the antioxidants and there's definitely there's a serotonin kick that you get from chocolate.
Oh yeah,
No doubt about it.
yeah.
Just finding that fine line between serotonin kick and sugar crash that you have to be careful about.
Caffeine.
That's right in the yeah. Although
yeah, for sure.
it's not a high volume of caffeine, is it?
No, it's not actually.
Right.
No, not eating moderately. It's not.
Right. And do you have a demand for sugar-free chocolate?
Mm-hmm. And I have in the past made it, but when I first started using the sugar-free, and it's a Belgian chocolate, and it tastes a lot better than a lot of the sugar-free.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was hard to convince people that it was actually sugar-free because it tasted good.
So sweet. What was it?
It was maltitol.
Maltitol, right.
So now there's more of a demand for it, but it's, I find even though it's tempered properly, it doesn't stay fresh quite as long. So I was just making, some of the solid chocolate things for a while, and of course it requires its own vat of chocolate, so that's another thing of
Does it
taking
temper
in and
slightly
out.
different as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sugar definitely has a unique quality. Straight sugar that can't be replicated in the artificial.
Yeah, the maltitol makes it, when it's in the vat, it almost looks kind of pudding-like.
Well, it's a sugar alcohol derivative. Right, who's this picture here?
Well, that's my brother in the olden days.
Right.
Yeah, so he's a biologist, and I think that's in Ontario where he spent a lot of his working life.
So science in your family.
Science in my family. I have another brother that's more in the genetic part of it in Saskatchewan. Yeah.
But there's more than science, and there's more than chocolate. There's also something out back in a big red barn.
Which we shall go and check out.
Let's check out that now. Okay, we've moved on to the big red barn that sits on Gladys's property. Gladys, tell me the story behind this barn.
Well, we think that it was probably built sometime in the 1920s. My dad and Mom bought the farm from Graysley's, I believe, in about 1944 or something like that. And of course, my dad used it as a barn as a usual barn would be used. But then in about, when Dad died in 1987, and after that, the foundation was starting to crumble. But my mom was still living here on the farm. Well, actually, she had moved into Kindersley, but she was still urging someone to fix the barn up because she said it's so much part of the yard, we need it to be fixed up. So my cousin's husband finally orchestrated a bunch of contractors to do it. So they lifted this whole barn up off its foundation, redid the bottom part and the foundation, and lowered it back down again. And as the different workers were here doing what they needed to do, and they were saying, this is turning out so nice, you better have a barn dance. So this part here, there's a new floor put on. That's the only difference. That's still the same cathedral ceiling and everything. And, things have changed a bit. I mean, the hay was on this side, and Dad had used this side for chop for the critters. And it's a bank barn. So it's on the side of a hill.
Right.
And so when people walk in this part, they think it's the bottom of the barn, but we just, like, there's just a few steps here, but this is
Right.
actually the loft, and then we can,
Oh. So what's below?
you have to come down and see.
Oh, how exciting. You slowly reveal these little gems. I love it. So when, is it called the barn raising when don't they have barn raising parties?
Barn raising, yeah, in the olden days when,
Yeah.
and the workers that were, working on this one to get it back in shape, they were just astounded at, how they built this in the olden days without all the fancy equipment they have now.
So tell me about these dances that you have. They happen yearly?
Yeah, we've been having one in June every year. We just had number 10. And it's basically a community gathering. So it's kind of word of mouth, non-alcoholic. There used to be always, like, just in this community at Driver, which is a little ways away, there's the school, and they'd have June picnics and community gatherings. And then in the last years, nothing was happening, and the school was, of course, kind of abandoned, and birds getting into it. So these pews came from there because the school was then used as a church. And so we moved the pews here and continue to have the community gathering in June. So some of the same people, but, community extends because people have friends and family that are all over the place now. So basically, that's what it is.
And do you have a band come in?
Yes, live band.
Where does the band come from?
The Right Touch, they have members from Eston and Etonia and Flaxcombe. And we've had a live band also from Dodsland Plenty area. So there's lots of musicians around here. But the Right Touch, Brian Swan, grew up not so far from here. And he played music since his high school days. So that was our first contact. But if they're not available, there's definitely quite a few musical people in the area.
And how many people do you have show up?
Anywhere between 70 and 100.
I bet it's packed.
And it depends
That's
on
so
the year and the
great.
weather, but it's all, little kids and grandmas, they're all here. Eleanor Smith comes out.
Oh, right. Yes, she mentioned that. She came out. I bet you have people saying, have more.
Yes.
Have more than just one a year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it would be nice, but it's a lot of work getting
sure.
ready. And it's hard to find the right time of year. Like June is really busy, but then people disappear in July and August on their holidays, and then harvest comes along. But I think whenever we had it, there'd be enough people to come and enjoy.
Right. This little adorable airplane that I'm standing beside here is something you used to ride on when you were a kid.
Yeah, I can remember sitting in it. I must have been about 2 or 3, I'm not sure. And because, it's really hard to pedal a little thing like that on the dirt. But I can remember imagining that I was flying all over the place in it. And then my brother took it and he painted it up again, so it was getting a bit rusty because it left outside. But yeah, it's a neat little
It's so
thing.
great.
And lo and behold, my son is a pilot, so who knew?
Of course, right. Yeah, you always wish your son chose a profession that was a little more grounded. It's really...
He's probably more grounded than anybody because he has a better perspective seeing how small and unimportant we are up there.
Right. That's a fascinating philosophy. There's another discussion in and of itself.
Yeah.
The philosophy of flying, the insignificant we.
Yes.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm going to come back and grab a photo of that. So let's see what this basement has in store. Wow.
Okay, so those are the stalls for the cattle that just got dumped out there.
You're right, it's quite deceiving. You would think that you were all on one level in it.
Yeah. So this is where we eat.
Aha.
So we do burgers and people bring potluck as in the olden days, and it's a wonderful gathering.
How fun. I'll have to come back in June. I have to wait a year now.
A year. How could I do that? Yeah.
That's fantastic. And you just said your 10th. So for 10 years you've been doing this.
Unbelievable. Yeah, this is when my mom had her 90th birthday, and she said, no, I don't want any party. And then finally she said, well, maybe we could have something in the barn. So that was still June. Her birthday wasn't in June, but she was out to enjoy the barn there.
Look at that photo of the barn at nighttime.
Yeah. And then that particular year, my family from La Ronge entertained.
How great. You're quite the lady. I have to say, you've had a very interesting life.
I guess I have.
And we walked by a drum set, and I said, who plays the drums? And you say, I do. And what's this percussion group?
Those particular drums I just fool around on with my own, but in Kindersley, Helen Barkley is a music teacher and a percussionist, and so once a week during the winter season we get together and we work on a piece. It usually takes us all year to perform at the music festival. And
oh, you do it at the music festival?
Well, we're too old to get judged, but it's interesting, the adjudicator. They always...
And you're all drums?
It depends on the year. This year we did a Japanese drumming piece, so we all had drums. Sometimes we do more like marimba, xylophone, vibraphone, steel drum. She's got it all.
Wow.
So, yeah.
The adjudicators love it.
They're so amazed at a little town, and it's all due to this amazing lady, Helen Barkley, who grew up just up the road here from me. So.
I'm going into my 13th year of adjudicating.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh.
You are quite the lady, I have to say. Well, you're fascinating.
Well, thank you, Kevin.
You've had your hand in so many wonderful projects, from biology and being a scientist, to the science of chocolate, to the science of barn dances. You live a very well-rounded life.
Well, thank you. I shall complete my day with much more enthusiasm.
Good. I know to you it's your life, and so you take it for granted. But for those of us who kind of helicopter in on your little bits of lives here in the farmlands, it's fascinating to us, to me.
And it's always fun to have somebody that doesn't have this life and point out to you all the things that, like you say, you take for granted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You're very, very lucky. And Max is lucky to have you, wherever Max is.
He's hiding under a bush. The sun's too hot, I think.
Right.
But...
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for taking the time to come.
Thanks for listening. The SaskScapes podcast is created by Kevin Power as part of the Culture Days Animateur program operated by SaskCulture. Funding to the cultural sector is provided through the Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund for Sports, Culture and Recreation. If you want to hear more of these podcasts, or to see the great work being done by other SaskCulture animateurs, please visit www.iheartculture.ca. Special thanks to Paved Arts in Saskatoon for their technical support. SaskScapes podcasts are also available through the iTunes Store. Music for SaskScapes is provided by Saskatchewan-born singer-songwriter Jeffrey Straker. There is no end to the stories to be told. So, until next time,